Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. John Maloney, I'm absolutely loving your brand new ominous look on screen. You can't see this screen if you are if you're listening on audio, but John had to rush out of his house, go to his
I did.
parents' house, and he had a screaming baby,
Yeah,
and he forgot
and I
all of the
forgot.
tech equipment, all his cables for his camera that he was going to
I
use.
just I just had loose bits of electronic equipment in my pockets falling out as I ran to the car with my screaming baby.
Was
And so
she?
I've got so I've
Yeah.
got an au so I've just got, like, I've got my camera, but then I've just got, like, a kettle and part of a toaster and, open open my
Electric
bag.
electric blanket.
Exactly.
It
And
actually
I
it's
was like, "This all the same, it's just cords, just put it in."
just plug it in. I'm sure I can get I'll get the feed. Just select the electric blanket feed in Squadcast and
Exactly,
it will come.
exactly.
It's probably one of those things where the video is going to perform way better because of the authenticity.
Yeah,
it's giving authenticity
that's
because
right,
the problem
and
has
the
been we spent all
I'm
this
like the
money on, like, slick setups, and then everybody tunes in
mm,
and goes, "Oh, this is a bunch of fucking bullshit." 'Cause it just
yeah,
look at that.
people
It's just a
going
bunch of fake bullshit.
exactly, the next sentence out of their mouths is gonna be, "Pay for our course." But
Yeah,
now
exactly.
it
Exactly.
just looks like I'm a frontline reporter,
Yeah,
and
it does.
in many ways I am.
John is
Um,
John's coming to us this morning from front lines of the Russia-Ukraine war, where
exactly.
he's been having a chat with Volodymyr Zelensky, and in poor Volodymyr Zelensky fashion, John's
Mm,
also just decided to chew him out in front of the media. John did the
I did.
same thing. John was
Said,
like,
"Mate, you've got you've got the worst cards, and I'm sick of it. Sick of you leaning on us." Yeah, this is kind of a
Australia. That would be
this
funny
is
if you got
sick of you
if
leaning
you
on
represented us.
Australia.
If you were just an Australian journalist with no
Yeah,
official connection to the government, and you just
exactly.
started saying you need to make a deal because we are sick to death of supporting you in Australia.
Yeah,
What
using our Kangaroo brand tanks, and this is kind of a Zelensky
you do?
shade.
You've
This
got
is a bit of
the
a this is a bit. It would be a polar fleece if it was him, but it is
mm,
similar scheme.
you've got the I'm in the trenches in Ukraine
Exactly.
coming to you live from my laptop. Look, was Ines, she was giving you some screams between your place and your parents' place?
Oh, yeah, she was. I'll tell you what happened on the way here. She was in the car and she's just 2 months old today, actually, 8 weeks old today,
Oh.
and she's starting to show signs of having preferences, and so we had Cat Stevens playing in the car, and I don't know
Oh.
why, and she loves it, and I said she seems to really like this, and Sin said, "Yeah, well, I sometimes play it to her when I'm up feeding her," and, so she might have gotten used to it, and then it switched to just random Spotify. Taylor Swift came on, and she just started screaming, and I was like, "That a girl," and then we put Cat Stevens back on. She's got it she's unfortunately inherited her dad's fondness for music that's 50 years out of date
It's very
over
dated.
and it
It's
yeah.
not time to make a change. Just
Exactly.
relax and read the Quran. There's so
Yeah.
much there's so much sharia you have to go through. Find an imam, settle down. Isn't that how that song goes?
That's pretty much it, yeah. Um, I mean, these days, I'm definitely on the side of the father in that song. Things have shifted
Yeah.
for me. I'm like, "This is good sage advice." Like,
Yeah.
don't don't worry about all that crap.
That's true. That
Uh, and if he hadn't, he wouldn't have converted to Islam and then taken decades to realize that actually he wasn't forbidden from playing music, and now he's back at it.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's probably his financial situation, or he
Mm,
just wanted some more of that sweet gold. Do you know the story about how Cat Stevens converted to Islam? Why that happened? He's told it quite
no.
publicly. He almost drowned, and I think
Right.
he must have been reading about different faiths because the
Mhm.
story he tells goes he was in the ocean swimming as a I don't know if he was agnostic or atheist or Christian or whatever, but he was drowning in the
Yeah.
ocean, and then he said that he prayed to Allah, I think,
Mm.
or potentially Muhammad, and said,
Yeah.
if you save me from drowning,
Mhm.
then I'm all yours." And he said a wave
Wow.
came and pushed him to shore. And then as soon as he got to shore, he said, "You know who I reckon's really got a big mouth? That Salman Rushdie," is what he said when he got back to shore.
Exactly. Straight on. He said,
He
"For as
said
my first deed as Muslim is gonna be to act on that
he's gonna be
fatwa."
he's gonna be fatwa. Is gonna be upholding a series of fatwas. Now, John,
Just just gets washed in by a wave and running up the beach towards Salman Rushdie.
he's he started pointing and screaming, "Hey, isn't that Salman Rushdie? What a stroke of luck! What a what a perfect opportunity to show my
Exactly.
commitment to my new faith instantly."
Dear
Uh,
Muhammad, if you spare my life, I will assassinate Salman Rushdie. What a deal. Yeah.
now, John, did you watch the full Oscars?
You know me. I watched a couple of previous years just to get in the mood, and then I
Yeah.
watched the 2025 Oscars start to finish. I'm a real kind of inside baseball Oscars watcher, so I love the kind of more technical, less glamorous awards for anim
the ones
for set design and animation and
The ones you
tech
have to watch clips
best.
of on the internet
Exactly.
because they're not part of the real broadcast, and there's just
Yeah.
people walking around not paying attention in the back. There's just there's cleaners and janitors on stage
Yeah,
sweeping as
that's
they're handed
right.
out those awards.
That's right. That's right. Just like the fire warden for the building is handing out the awards for, best key grip or whatever.
That
Um,
would be a great award. Best
yeah.
best key grip, but most clever use of tape on set
Yeah,
of
that's right.
masking tape.
Exactly. Um,
Best
I I
gaff.
watched I watched a few bits and I watched a little bit of coverage of the Oscars, and I watched some of, Adrian Brody's acceptance speech. It's not really something you can watch in a single sitting because
In
it's about as long as The Architect,
it, uh,
but
The Brutalist is the
Brutalist.
yeah, no, it has the yeah, that I feel like somebody we can't be the first one to make this joke. But that's so good. You would say I watched Adrian Brody's acceptance speech for Best Actor in The Brutalist, and there was an intermission, so I had to go out and
Exactly.
I went out and had a cigarette during his
Yeah, that's right.
speech.
That's right.
Um,
And he got yeah, it was the longest, we'll get to it, I'm sure, but it was the longest Oscars acceptance speech, I think, ever.
It's
And
yeah, it's important to us, the Oscars, because it is pure death of celebrity 2025, which is the pivot
mm,
of the podcast.
mm,
It's don't praise the machine, the internet's number one news source on the death of celebrity
yeah,
2025. And it is one of the biggest elite show off out of touch shows that exist. It's really up there with the Met Gala and this
yeah.
kind of like self-importance of people who are not important at all. And again, it was it was just another example. You can watch, Brody's speech. It's funny actually because I don't know a lot about Adrian Brody, except I've seen him in quite a few films and I've quite liked him. I was quite
Mm,
surprised at how his Oscars speech was. When I saw it,
right.
I kind of for whatever reason, without knowing him, I thought, oh, Adrian Brody seems like a down to earth guy. I'm sure he'll come up and give a
Yeah,
good speech. But he came up and gave the most like Oscars speech you can possibly
really.
imagine. Like
Yeah,
one of those like, I'm so blessed to be with all of you in this room, and what we do is important and special, and
yeah,
it's exactly that kind of
yeah,
tone that you've just seen a
yeah,
million times, rather than going up there and just being like, Thank you so much. I really liked the film, and
Mm,
I'm really proud to receive this, and a lot of cool people worked on it. Nah, he did.
did the
He did
old
the. He did the.
we're part of we're ahead of the curve in
Yeah,
terms of culture, and we're really saving the world from darkness that would otherwise
exactly. It's a very
befall it.
kind of
Yeah.
like Meryl. Whenever I just think Meryl Streep, I think Meryl Streep is kind of the essence of the Oscars, and he it had a little bit
Yeah.
too. It had a little bit too much Streep
Street
in
the
it, and he
street
did.
the street count. It's
The
too
street count was
high
too
street
high.
count.
It's too
Yeah.
high. Too high a
Yeah.
street count. I haven't seen that film. I've heard mixed things.
Yeah.
It sounded
Me
like a cool
too.
idea. Like I like
Yeah.
brutalism I love the Barbican. I like brutalism,
Sure.
so I'd
Yeah.
go and check that out. But I was having a look here
It's
at the list of winners, John. So
yeah.
and I said to you, how many of these have you seen? So just off the top of your head, is there anything that was at the Oscars, maybe that even didn't win, that came second or something, that you have seen this
I've
year?
seen I've seen A Real Pain, which
Oh
has
yeah.
Kieran Culkin,
So
and
let's start
it's a
there.
sort of it's really it sort of picks up where Home Alone left off, and
It's the sequel to Home
yeah.
Alone.
I mean, it's a standalone film, but I thought it was intended as a sequel, and I
After
don't know why it didn't have Kieran in it, but I guess
Macaulay
it had.
did
Sorry, it didn't have Macaulay. It had Kieran.
had Kieran.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, the other ones I really haven't. I mean, The Brutalist I haven't seen. The Substance I've seen. A
What's
Complete
what's what's
Unknown.
what's the substance?
Substance is the film with Demi or Demi
Oh yeah,
Moore,
yeah, okay.
and it's a kind of classic. My little brother Dargle,
Mm,
who AKA Dan, pointed out that A24 has kind of gotten into this habit of making these very stylized, kind of very like slick, surrealist kind of horror out there sort of films,
mm,
and it's sort of in that vein. So it's basically a kind of send up of celebrity and aging, and it's a bit of a body horror slash comedy film,
mm.
and I didn't mind it. I thought it was decent. I didn't watch any of the others though. I haven't seen A Complete Unknown. I haven't seen The Apprentice. I haven't seen Wicked.
Oh, I've seen
I
The
have.
Apprentice. Oh, yeah, okay, we've talked about sorry, I didn't know that The
Oh
Apprentice
no, I've
was
seen The
there.
Apprentice. I've seen The
Okay.
Apprentice. Yeah,
I
sorry.
liked The
That's
Apprentice. Like, I thought The
yeah,
Apprentice
that
was
was good.
pretty good. Like, I think it kinda lost its way, but for the first half, I loved it. I was like
Yeah,
it was one of those films where for the first half of it, I was like, "This is really incredible." Like, this is the place.
yeah,
I'm so entertained, and I'm so in this world, and then I
yeah,
felt that it sort of tonally lost its way
yeah. It
a
wasn't
little bit.
didn't didn't quite seem like it knew how to end or where to go. But I agree. But I enjoyed that. I haven't seen A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan
Yeah, I'd like
biopic.
to see that.
Um,
What did you think of it? What did you think of A Real Pain? You could start there. What did you think of A Real Pain?
yeah, I didn't mind it. I have a friend who uh, almost, or maybe even did walk out because he
Mm.
disliked it so much. I never know when I go and see a movie um, at FOMO cinemas in Brunswick. I never know if I'm enjoying the film or I just like eating sweet treats in a comfortable seat. And I
You're
was
like,
doing that.
you're like, walk out, but there's
Y-
popcorn and
y-
Coke. What are you talking about?
exactly,
But
exactly,
when you walked out, where did you put the popcorn and Coke? I'm so confused.
exactly.
Did you just walk around with it? But the bucket's so
Yeah,
big.
that's right. At FOMO, you can order stuff from a little pad while you're watching the movie, and somebody brings it in. So there's no chance I'm walking out, no matter how bad the movie is. I'll just be like, another chop top, please. I'll just look at my phone instead of watching the movie and eat a chop top. But yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought it was a kind of, like one of those understated little character portraits. It
Mm,
didn't really do anything. Like it's not a particularly memorable film, I didn't think, but like
mm.
competent. I don't know. Have you seen it?
Yeah, so this is going to be a bit of a running theme, and this is a bit of a running theme with me in films. I
Mm.
watched it at home, and
You hate
I couldn't walk.
famously hate him.
I couldn't walk out, but I could switch
Mm.
off. So
Yeah, okay.
I used the switch off button. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't terrible. It was just like I got it from the for the first minute. It's like, oh, one of them's
Mm.
nervous and the other
Yeah,
one's sassy, and I'm like, okay.
yeah.
And then it got to the section where they joined the tour group that was going
Mhm.
on the excursion of the former, like, because
Of Auschwitz,
yeah,
etcetera.
exactly. And
Yeah,
they were all sharing their personal stories, and
yeah,
then Jesse Eisenberg was being all nervous, and Kieran Culkin was being all like sassy
yeah,
and
and sort of
and
overly
brash
outspoken.
and
Yeah.
overly outspoken. And I was like, well, he's just being his character in Succession, and Jesse
Mm.
Eisenberg is just being like his character from Facebook's like kind of like
It's true.
I just was like, and it was just so obvious. I'm like, I'm not sitting
Mhm.
through 2 hours of Kieran Culkin being sassy. It's so
Mm.
like, oh, he's gonna say things throughout the film, and everyone's gonna go, oh no, that's a bit awkward. And then
Yeah,
and then these two cousins that like haven't
and then
never been around
obviously,
each other.
predictably, as you I mean, you it doesn't sound like you saw it through, but as you would have probably predicted, of course, he, is revealed to have kind of serious pain in his
I
background
could
and
never have
he's
guessed. I could never have
yeah,
guessed
he's
that the sass was masking something all
yeah,
along.
he's the first character that has ever, I think, featured in a film where sassiness is masking pain.
And
And yeah, but
it turned out the
I
nervous one actually had it all together, and it was the one with the
exactly.
family. He was the one who was actually okay, even though he was a little bit nervous.
Mm,
At core, he was actually fine. And the other
mm.
one who's like eating popcorn and going, whatever, I don't care about this, whatever. Turns out he had a real bunch of problems, and
It's true. And I gotta say, I mean, it sort of worked with his character because he wasn't very likable as a character, but I find Jesse Eisenberg pretty annoying. And the fact that he's kind of this character I dislike in all of his major roles makes me think I probably would just dislike him in real life. Uh, but I'm a Culkin head. So if either of
yeah,
those guys are in a film, I got to buy a ticket.
I'm a real cult head. I'm
I'm a
abs.
yeah, exactly. I was
Isn't it
coked up watching
who?
that, and then I kept saying to the person next to me, I kept saying like, "Wonder what wonder what happened to Kevin? Are we gonna when's his character coming?"
Isn't it? What a turn up for the books that Kieran Culkin has just won. Did he
Mm.
win? Did he win best act? No, no, that was Brody. He won some
Best supporting actor, I
best
think.
supporting act. Like
And
who
he
would have
beat our
known?
very own he beat our very own Guy Pearce.
Oh,
S
What was Guy Pearce
I think he's in The
in?
Brutalist.
Ah, he was in the Neighbors the movie. He made a reappearance in
Exactly. Yeah, he played he played,
Russell Crowe,
um
Kylie Minogue, Jason
yeah,
Don. They were in Neighbors the movie.
he
Jason
played,
Donovan.
Kylie Minogue's grandfather, Ashkenazi grandfather in the Brutalist.
Did Yeah, okay. So, I mean, yeah, I can't get over who could have predicted that the actor that like the Macaulay would sort of disappear and just become oh
Mm,
yeah, remember me from Home Alone, and that's it.
yeah,
I'm not doing any. I'm just, even if I do films, they're going to be completely forgettable and nobody will know me from them.
yeah,
And then Kieran, the one who like hammered the cheese pizza and drank too much Pepsi and sat at the table. Who would have thought that funny little guy would have gone on to
yeah,
win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars?
exactly. I did see, just speaking of fake tie-ins, I did see a great one where because the guy who played Kevin's dad, I think his name was John Hurd or
Yeah,
something Hurd,
yeah.
and then he was subsequently in The Sopranos as a corrupt cop
Okay.
whose character arc ends when he jumps off a bridge, and so it just had this kind of scene where he realized that he'd left Kevin behind from Home Alone, and then it cut to him just jumping off a bridge in The Sopranos.
That's I think on Instagram, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Which is a little kind of real tie-in. But I mean, obviously Kieran now is right for that kind of treatment. But yeah, it's true. It is such a turn up for the books that he would be. I mean, the best I thought you could hope for the Culkins was that they would just be okay as people because they had such a weird,
Yeah. Totally.
particularly Macaulay had such a weird trajectory, and he had this sort of he had all the potential to become. I mean, I think he really did struggle for a few years and is okay now, is at least the story that we've been told. But um, he had that potential to become like a kind of Corey Feldman-esque weirdo
Yeah,
who just
totally.
had sort of had been to too many weird child Hollywood parties and it had never quite recovered.
Does does Kieran ever not play brash sass? That's my question because
Mm,
I feel like you shouldn't be given awards if you just are playing the same. Like that's crazy to me, and I could be wrong. Maybe he's like I saw him in something years ago, which I forget now, which I remember thinking he was really good in. But
yeah,
since Succession, all I can see him is brash sass, and I just
that's
think
true.
you can't give people awards for being typecast in a particular role that you just keep playing.
Mm,
Like it's not like oh the best actor award goes to Ernest from Ernest Goes to Camp. Like you can't. That's not what
true.
it's for. You can't do
Yeah,
that.
they'll
But
have
it.
to. They should create the Robert Downey Jr. Memorial Award for brash sass. Um,
Yeah, exactly. You have to do
mm,
like if you've played a whole bunch of different roles, then
mm,
it's funny actually. Like I almost feel like best actor has to be sort of taken in a wider context for that very reason. Like if somebody's been around for
yeah,
years, you
yeah,
wouldn't just go. I mean, he plays quite. It's funny actually. He plays quite different characters now, which I think is quite amazing. Which is Hugh Grant, but it's like if you'd given Hugh Grant an award in the fucking
yeah.
mid 2000s for being. I'm sorry, I'm terribly. Really? Like you can't give that best actor if that's like
No,
20. If that's you give it to the for the 20th time that he does that. Yeah,
totally.
really? Well,
Yeah,
no, hardly. Rather, like you just. That's not what
that's true.
it's for having. It's for having range. Surely, look at my
Yeah,
range.
yeah, that's true. It's you would think so, and I mean, I would have thought who else was in the running for best supporting actor? Mm, yeah, I mean, give it to Guy Pearce
Yeah,
if he can be in Memento and in The Brutalist
L-
and in
L.A.
he's
Confidential.
LA Confidential. He's probably in Ocean Girl or Ship to Shore or one of those Australian 90s
Round,
kids shows.
round the twist.
Round the
Guy
twist.
Pearce from Round the Twist. Uh,
Exactly.
we should definitely talk about Anora because
Mm,
that really cleaned up, and
mhm.
I really nearly walked out of that film.
Wow, I haven't seen that one. Okay.
Uh,
I have heard mixed reports though.
Yeah,
Um,
so I remember distinctly, I went and I took my German naturalization test. Just for
yeah.
anybody who's wondering, I got 31 out of 33. That's how Deutsch I am. But when I took the
Wow.
test, when I
Far
took,
out.
yeah, I'm super super Deutsch these days, John. Now, when I
Mm,
took the test, I gave myself a little reward because I'd studied very hard for it, and I knew I'd done quite a good job in there. And I was like, let me see what's going on. And somebody had told me at a party or a dinner, like the week
mhm.
earlier, oh, you have to go and see Anora. It's like, it's so amazing. You have to go and see it. So it was a Tuesday or something. And I thought, fuck
Yeah.
it. Yeah, this would be great. I'll reward myself with a little movie. So I checked my phone and there was a screening not too far from me. Went down and saw it. And I was totally into it for the first, I don't know, like 10, 15 minutes. But,
Mhm.
but again, we've spoken about this on the podcast before. It's actually really easy to get people into your film in the first like 15 minutes because you
Mm,
don't have to establish the rules of the world. You can just kind of throw shit at people and people just are trying to work out what world they're in. And so you just
yeah.
accept. You go, wow, I mean, this is visually spectacular and it's like these angles are cool. It's really beautifully lit and the acting's good and
Mm,
I can't wait to see where this goes. So your
mm,
your first inclination is often to think that the film is really good. And that was very much, I want to do an entire podcast about the Pixar film Wall-E, by the way, because
Mhm.
I think Wall-E was on track for the first like third of that film I
Okay.
was like, this is the greatest film that I've ever seen in my life. And it goes so wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's like two films. It's fucking crazy. But if Wall-E had just stayed as the atmosphere of that film and the fact that there's no language,
Yeah.
there's no speaking, there's no speech in Wall-E except air or whatever the fucking robot says. For like, and he's, oh my God, I just fucking love the first third of Wall-E
Mm.
so much. It's like this
Mm.
incredible dystopian thing they've created. And then it just is like, it's just, like, what are you guys doing? This is fucking mental. Like, you've completely fucked this up. But
Mm. Amazing.
Anora
I wonder
starts off, she's
whether
like,
there's an explanation for that, by the way, in Wally's case.
there's several people on YouTube that share my exact opinion because
Yeah, okay.
I was kind of shocked at how amazing it was and then how bad it went
Yeah.
really quickly. It's almost
Yeah.
like Wall-E is almost like some like filmmaker with a real vision was allowed to do the first third, and then the Disney Corp came in and said, "Hey, fuckface, this is a kids film, so put a bunch of globulous fat human characters in it that just start yapping," and you
Mm.
just go, "Why have you done this? It was going to be the best film I've ever seen in my entire
Yeah,
life."
right. Yeah.
But Anora starts, and I was like, "Cool!" It starts in a strip club. The actress is doing a great job, and I was like, "Man, I can't wait to see where this goes." And it's serious. Like, it starts off and it's like a serious kind of film with a serious kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And then basically what happens is she meets a wealthy Russian boy, and then
Yeah.
they party together, they kind of start a relationship, and then
Mhm.
he's like, "I'm gonna marry you, you're amazing," and she's like, "Fuck it, let's get married," and she goes back to his mansion. And then the first cracks in the story start to happen because like it turns out his dad is a wealthy Russian businessman or oligarch or something, and
Right.
they disapprove of their rich son marrying this stripper. So basically,
Yeah.
like, this kind of Russian entourage turns up at the McMansion that this guy rents in New York City,
Yeah.
and there's like these people who represent the father, and they appear to be like gangsters. So I'm still on board.
Right.
I'm going, okay, this is going to be interesting. Like, she's married this wealthy Russian guy. The families, you still haven't met the parents. They don't appear until later, but there's kind of like these thugs that
Mhm.
turn up and they're like, "You cannot marry her. Very bad. She not to marry you. Your father very mad. He call us and say that you cannot marry him." And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm on board. It's like a bit menacing.
Yeah.
But then what happened was, like, even though she's this fucking nobody and this Russian oligarch who's got like gangsters that represent him,
Mhm.
they kind of have her and they're like, you need to sign form that says that this marriage annulled and we not leave till you sign form. You think you can just marry son of oligarch? We are very powerful, right? And so you're going, okay, cool. So, they are obviously the ones in power. I'm interested.
Yeah.
And it's a serious film. And then she starts kind of like kicking off like a sort of spoilt brat and like smashing vases and going, "You can't tell me that I'm marrying him. You can't tell me what to do. I'm not going to get divorced. Fuck you." And there's like these fucking Russian gangsters,
Mm.
and they just, instead of like punching her in the face and going, "Shut the fuck up, like, do what we say,"
Yeah.
they go, "Oh no, she acting crazy. What are we going to do?" And I'm just going, what is going on? Like, I was watching a serious film and it
Yeah.
suddenly turned into, and I was like, okay, cool. Now the Russian gangsters, they're the ones like holding all the cards. And suddenly it's like this, oh, she's this kind of badass bitch and it's a comedy and she's throwing vases everywhere. And one of them is sort of
Mm.
trying to corral her to stop smashing things and going,
Mm.
"Please don't. No, all we want is for you to annul marriage. Why you do this?" And she goes, "Fuck you, you fucking piece of shit." And it's just, and then the film is like, she's just difficult. And
Yeah.
they drive around New York and it becomes a comedy. And I've
Mm.
heard people say, "Oh, this filmmaker, he's known for,
He's genre bending.
he's genre bending." And I'm like,
Mm.
No, this is a bad film, like bad, and it's no longer interesting. And I was
Mm.
excited to be on this ride for what happened, And it
Yeah.
kind of reminded me a little bit of the first ever Safdie brothers film I ever saw, which I forget the name
Yeah.
of. Um, but that stars what's his name from The Lighthouse,
Oh,
and
yeah, Willem Dafoe
yeah, but the
or
the
the
other guy, the other
oh, yeah. What's the other
um
guy's name?
I always
Robert
I
Pattinson?
yeah, Robert Pattinson. That it kind of reminded me of that because that film is also the same in that it starts and it's very beautifully shot and
Mm,
stylized, and then you
yeah.
realize, oh, there's nothing here. Like this is not a
Yeah.
this is just dressed up to look nice. But I mean, I remember
Mm,
coming out of that film with Robert Pattinson and going, I think that's the emptiest film that I've ever seen. Like
mm.
there's no lesson, there's no redeeming characters. It was all just
It's just
nice
nice
pictures,
visuals.
and it felt like two young boys that were like, let's make a cool film where there's action and running around and craziness. And
Yeah.
Anora just kind of reminded me of that, and I was like,
You
this
know,
is fucking terrible.
it's because Julia Fox wasn't the Safdie's muse yet, and when she became the muse on Uncut Jams, it suddenly got better.
Um, so then I'm just sitting there in the cinema going, okay, I hate this. Like, and they try and make this, they make they create this fucking stupid like tension and kind of romantic interest between
Yeah.
the gangster who was just supposed to punch her in the face and tell her to shut up, but instead he going,
Mm,
oh no, you're so crazy, but I'm having trouble with my girlfriend and you so, and
oh gosh.
maybe we should be together later. And so that's like what happens. And then there's this incredibly off tone scene at the very end that I
Yeah.
just won't speak to anyone, but it happens in a car and people, I
Right.
already hated this film. And then there's this like, then there's this scene at the end where I was like, I was honestly like my face was in my hands going, this is so off. And
Yeah.
like, you can just feel the filmmaker thinking that they're so interesting and cool. And they're going, oh, we're going to put this in. It's going to be so edgy. And I'm just like, this was I'm so surprised that it has won.
Mm,
But as I mentioned to you, this is very interesting. That film, I believe, cost $8 million to make,
yeah.
and I think I guess the distributor maybe pays. Um, I guess they had a sense, or maybe you get told by the Academy, hey, you know, this is the kind of film that we'd like to give Academy Awards to, and then
Yeah.
they spent $18 million on its Oscar campaign.
That's so nuts.
So
After so basically $10 million more paying the Academy I mean, what does an Oscar campaign even involve?
so
How
I
does
think
that
it's a
cost 18 million bucks?
I think it's so I think it's a lot of media appearances, flying people around. I think you do
Mm,
special I think you'd maybe do special screenings or special events, but there's a whole bunch of
right.
things you have to do to generate Oscar buzz. Apparently
Yeah.
it costs about $18 million. And then you get all
That's
these
nuts.
awards. And then I think the filmmaker came out and said, this film's dedicated to like all the sex workers in America. And I just thought, yeah,
Mm,
you know who really cares about the kind of women that end up in sex work in America is Hollywood. They're the kind of
yeah.
people that really empathize with and are, and they really understand the reasons that people
Mm,
end up in sex work, and that's really a major concern of theirs.
it is. I mean, that was astounding when he told me that because I thought, like, what are they just like giving people like mailing Rolex watches to every member of the
Yeah,
Academy
it
or
must
like,
so it must be that kind of stuff. It's a good thing. Maybe I can ask Shaji Sikwi and say, I'll say, Anora, I heard, spent 18 million on their Oscars campaign.
mhm.
Where does that money go for an Oscars campaign? And Shaji Sikwi says, yes, reports suggest that Neon, the studio behind Anatomy of a, hang on, no, not Anatomy of a Fall. Is that the same thing? Does Anora mean Anatomy of a Fall? No, I think that's a different film.
No, a different film.
Anyway, here you go. So, I mean, I think it's the same thing. So, screenings and events for Academy members and guilds,
Mm,
organizing exclusive screenings with Q&A sessions featuring director, cast, and crew for industry peers and press, holding special events to generate buzz, travel and hospitality costs, flying in cast and crew for these
Mm.
events, trade advertising, huge costs, full page ads in Variety. I think this was about another film, but this so they pay for like ads in Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, so like press media,
Yeah.
social media ads, consultants and publicists, voter outreach, expensive screeners,
Mm.
sending physical and digital copies of the film to voters, swag and gifts. While outright
Mm.
bribery isn't allowed, studios often send fancy coffee table books, vinyls, soundtracks, or even small gifts
Oh,
that,
man.
that reinforce the movie's themes. Parties and dinners, lavish
Yeah.
industry parties where Academy members mingle with the film stars and filmmakers, talk show appearances and PR push, last minute blitz like spending money on reminder ads, extra screenings, and social media posts. So
It's
that's how you
such
get it.
a it's such a kind of insular echo chamber, isn't it? That whole thing. Like, who the fuck reads Variety except sort of tragic LA wannabes? You know, it's like it's kind of amazing. I mean, I was watching I was watching the YouTube version of a podcast called The Rest is Entertainment. Some of you may have heard of it. Marina Hyde is one of the hosts, and she was talking about it's a British kind of, you know, pop culture podcast, and she talks a lot about. I mean, she sort of agrees with us, I think, about the off key nature of the Oscars and the gradual decline of celebrity. And we're saying, you know, it's just like the people that they're spending money on. And then, I mean, they're the same people that Adrian Brody is thanking are
Mm,
all these people who you don't know, but everyone in Hollywood knows. And they're probably just the worst human beings, like just kind of, just sort of greasy, slippery agents who make deals. Like the person who almost never gets thanked is the actual fucking person who wrote the film, which is like, you wouldn't even know, and Adrian Brody acts like he came up with the idea for The Brutalist, even though like he absolutely couldn't, and just read the lines. And he takes 6 minutes on the stand, and when they start to play him off, says like, "No, no, no, I've been here before. You know, I don't. How dare you?" Basically, but it's this kind of thing where everyone who like, who is this for? You know, it's like, I
yeah,
mean, the other thing that Marina says is the screenwriter doesn't get called out. It's usually like, you know, Weinstein-esque kind of people who grease the wheels of production.
yeah,
But the other people who don't get called out are the people like nobody says thanks to all the fans who come and watch these movies. And it's like that would be kind of seen as a bit crass, even though like, well, the whole thing that this whole system is basically so that ordinary people can watch movies, but you all act like that's not what you're doing. It's weird. And like nobody says, I mean, I guess you have to go to like the People's Choice Awards for somebody to say thanks to all the fans. I mean, why doesn't
yeah.
Adrian Brody say, please keep coming to movies and thanks very much? You know, like that's where the money's actually coming from.
He just talks about. He says, you know what? I've never seen so much bravery in a room as I
Mm,
have here in this room
exactly.
full of actors. The
Yeah.
amount of
And
like my grandfather used to talk to me about having to fight in World War II, but that pales into comparison. That bravery has got nothing
yeah,
on what is in this room tonight. The
it's
amount,
like Viola Davis, I think it was, who said acting is the only job that is about celebrating a life or something like that. And it was like, well, I mean, you could say that people performing life-saving surgeries are doing something about, you know, human life that maybe actors aren't, um, but it's this kind of, I mean, it's such a weird little world, and it's a world that increasingly seems bizarre because fewer and fewer people actually care about it. I mean, you know, not I think fewer and fewer people are actually watching the Oscars,
sure,
and also obviously fewer people are actually going to the cinema to watch these movies. But and any kind of art house film, apparently, you're talking about like a pretty small audience relative to what you might have been talking about in the 90s or something, or earlier than that. But it sort of continues on, you know, equally convinced of its own importance, even as the world sort of gradually loses interest, which is a fun thing to observe. But the other thing that Marina Hyde talked about, which I thought was an apposite comparison, was like if you hear, because apparently Adrian Brody has this chip on his shoulder because he won the Oscar as a very young guy for
For the
for the for
pianist.
the for the pianist, and then had a period of relative, obscurity. And so he has this kind of, anyone who would listen in those intervening years, he'd talk about like how Hollywood's broken and they don't appreciate how great he is and whatever. And then, he kind of tells this comeback narrative. And it's like, well, yeah, but what were you doing in those intervening years? You're probably living in a mansion, with a fucking pool and a tennis court and servants. Like,
Is that
pretty hard.
after the
It's pretty
pianist? I had to wait. I was waiting tables while I made movies.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like, I mean, compare that to, she was comparing it to athletes who give these speeches, and you kind of really believe that this person did actually have to work incredibly hard to do this thing. And often they're quite gracious and humble. And often they actually have to really make sacrifices to do that. Whereas, what did Adrian Brody do? I mean, he's just been like hooking up with Weinstein's ex-wife and and and, and flouncing around Hollywood.
As I said to you, yeah, the gap between like I can't. I can't work out how much of this sort of celebrity, the continued celebrity, the push of celebrity culture from mainstream media, it starts to feel like a troll to me
Yeah.
because I just can't believe that anybody is doing this with sincerity right now. Because like when I
Mm,
watch, for example, the Meghan Merkel thing, I think to myself, they must have put this out knowing that people would hate it, and that's why
mm,
they put it out
mm.
because they know people will hate watch it. Like the idea that the people behind that show and the people at Netflix would have thought that that would play well,
Yeah.
that she would
Yeah.
play well. Like I can't get my head around how people being that out of touch. Like it just doesn't make sense. Like if you'd said to
No.
me, "How about we make a show with Meghan Merkel where she
Mm.
cooks and pretends
It's
to be
it's
relatable?"
Markle, by the way. I love how you always say Merkel because of
Yes, mate, because of
because of
because of my
Angela.
hero, because of my hero, and Meghan Markle. Like I would just go, no, 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 hang on, read the room, guys. Like
Yeah.
just get on the internet where real people are talking to each other. Everybody hates her,
Mm,
and she married into the British royal family, who themselves
mm.
should be dismantled. This is not what people.
Yeah.
We're not doing this anymore. Like you're operating in a
No,
kind of 1980s, 1990s celebrity culture
exactly.
world. And as I said to
This
you,
isn't this is pre-cost of living
this is
content,
this is like this
Mm,
is pre-social people talking on social media. Like this world is crumbling, and
mm,
I just can't believe that somebody at Netflix has probably lost their job after this came out. Like because I was
mm.
so shocked that everybody fucking hates this show, and
Why? Well, yeah, why
we're
don't you
so
wanna
shocked that people
see
hate the Oscars.
what
What is what? Who are you people?
exactly. Yeah, why don't you wanna watch Megan make homemade apple cider vinegar for Mindy Kaling? I don't understand why that doesn't inspire you.
Mindy
But
Kaling,
it's true. I mean,
I could do it. Fuck,
it's just been renewed for a second series already, second season,
I can't
with
imagine.
Love Megan.
Like I said, unless everybody now just goes, look, unless people go to Megan and go, look, you're finished. People hate you. So here's the thing: you have to do the villain thing. It's funny. I've been watching the Vince McMahon, like WWE documentary on
Mhm,
Netflix, which is great. Can highly recommend. And
mhm.
it kind of reminds me a little bit of what like the WWE, where basically these people go, well, I have to be a heel now. I can't be a face anymore. I have to be a heel. So like
Right.
the Baldwins, or particularly Hilaria, I assume her people have gone, look, everybody hates you, so you've got maybe I don't know how long you can run with this. There's definitely some juice in being hated. I don't, it's probably not a great long term plan. It's probably spiritually
Yeah.
pretty destructive, but you can make money
Yeah.
from people hate watching you. And similarly,
Mm,
when I see like the Meghan Markle thing, I'm like, the only thing I can think is, and it's I do kind of know that they haven't said this to her, but I'm just
mm.
like, how can she not realize that the only angle now is for you to get hate watched? But
Yeah.
they real because I mean she was on. We don't have time for this, but we should do the whole Meghan Merkel thing. Her appearance on Drew Barrymore is just death of celebrity piece de resistance. Piece de resistance. Like Drew Barrymore and Meghan Merkel is
Yeah.
just like if you want to
Oh,
see what's
just
gonna why celebrities are dying, and
Mm.
their self-importance and lack of down-to-earthness. All you need to
Also
do is
that,
watch Meghan Markle and Drew Barrymore sitting down and talking to one another.
and it's a painful thing to watch for those who have fond memories of Drew Barrymore, who seemed for some time
Yeah,
like a kind of uncharacteristically down to earth starlet who'd had this, she'd grown up in celebrity, but she had this kind of,
yeah.
she went off the rails and then kind of got herself together, and she seemed very sort of relatable. And now she's kind of monetized that, but in a way that completely invalidates it as any authentic way of actually, of any authentic representation of who she is, because she's sitting on the couch, kind of cross-legged,
Cross-legged.
cradling a mug and sticking her face in someone's face, saying, how did this make you feel though?" And they're
Harry.
just like, "Mm, mm."
Um,
And all the questions are like, "But why are you so beautiful?" I wanted to, and so it's like, why don't you ask a challenging question occasionally?
so I mean, I can also recommend people look up Zoe Salander's, not just her Oscars speech, but you really need to look up Zoe Salander's Golden Globe award-winning speech where
Yeah,
she gets
Saldana, I think it is, right?
Saldana,
Yeah.
where the first thing she sort of says is like, "I have dyslexia," which is you're just going, "This is too perfect. This is too perfect. This this
I have
speech." She's like,
dyslexia.
"You have to like." She's like, "You have. I'm neurodivergent, so
Mm,
you all have to accept that." And
beautiful. Love to
and
see love to see my disabled brethren getting represented at the Oscars.
he's not only is she the first Dominican to ever win to ever win that award, but she's the first dyslexic. She's the first with a disability to ever
Wow.
win
Yeah, there you
an
go.
award.
First dyslexic Dominican. It's a very niche glass ceiling that she's broken there.
The guy, the guy who won like best makeup artist also did the whole like, I'm the first black guy to like win, and I was just like, are we still doing this? Like
Mm,
it's just really out of touch. And I was gonna say, the different if you want to see like the death of celebrity in real time, the difference between like the legacy mainstream media organizations like ET, Entertainment Tonight, and how they're going, the Oscars was a beautiful, amazing fest of bravery once again. We're going to give you all the gossip of how the most amazing, incredible people in the world won awards and we worship them. And that's
yeah,
still, it feels exactly the same as it did like 20 years ago.
yeah.
But then if you go on TikTok, like TikTok is just like, fuck these people, fuck every single, so there's just like people slagging Zoe Saldana for like doing
Yeah,
like dropping in and out of accents and claiming that
right.
she's like, brave and
Why do they all do that? So
my
they
mom,
love
mommy. Did you see when she won? She got up there and started. You've not seen this? She started crying
no.
and said, "Mummy, mummy." It's just
Oh,
incredible. And people on TikTok are just going, "No, we're not having this. We're not having this anymore." So the question is like, when is the breaking point? Because like
yeah,
they're still saying like mainstream legacy entertainment media is still saying this is really good and important and you love this. But
yeah.
but people don't think less and less and less and less and less people actually think that. They're trying to like gaslight you into thinking, like you put on Entertainment Tonight and you go, "Oh, I guess celebrities are still brave and important." But just open TikTok and you'll see that people don't think celebrities are brave and
Mm,
important.
there is one good thing, which is that none of the actors from Wicked, I think, won an award, and I love that for them, because I was sick to death of even hearing about that movie. It won a couple of awards for, as you'd expect, for things like costume design and whatever. But Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, ba-bow.
Don't worry, but I'm always Don't Praise the Machine is always holding space for them if
Mm,
they ever need space.
yeah,
It's being held in Berlin and Melbourne.
yeah. I
Um,
think this counts as queer media,
yeah,
and you hold
definitely.
space for them.
It's
Yeah.
definitely queer. We're definitely queer media over here. Um, John, that's been a great episode. I want to say thank you so much for putting together a little pod studio last minute after your baby chewed through the cables like a little hungry,
Exactly.
like a little hungry rat.
Exactly. She's teething at the moment, so I just give her wires to chew on.
Throw away the Sennheisers. I'm just here. This guy just throw the fucking Sennheisers in the USB 3
Just don't
cable.
just don't put your fingers in there or she'll go down right down to the bone.
That was our 2025 Oscar special. John
Oscars deep
Maloney,
dive.
Oscars deep dive. And I also want to say to our Patreons, apologies that the Don't Praise the Machine After Dark is 1 week late this week, but do not worry. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you will be getting the bonus members only episode this week. Don't Praise the Machine After Dark. And boy, do we have some hot and spicy themes that they won't let us upload to the regular channel. The superiors say you can't say that. You can't. They say you can't dress like this. They say, Alex, you can't do that act on regular YouTube. So if you want to see lewd acts, Don't Praise the Machine,
lewd acts.
Patreon, choose the tier that's right for you and your family. Do you want to see us out, John?
I want to see us out and say thank you very much for joining us on this week's deep dive of the 2025 Oscars. We can't wait to see you next week.
At the podcast.